Greetings and welcome to CRT Gaming Podcast, episode number 48, The King of Fighters 98. This is Jones, and with me this evening is Gohan and Dazpick. How are you doing this evening, Mr. Gohan, sir?
Awesome, man. Ready to talk about a classic with you guys.
And you, Mr. Dazpick, did you get a chance to, get some burn knuckle action in?
Okay.
I think that is a yes. But, yeah, we did, basically we did fighting games that are made by SNK. He's got Terry Bogart losing his mind in the background. And it was my choice. So I went with the King of Fighters 98 here. I had always enjoyed the King of Fighters series. Well, let's go back in time a little bit where I say that. Like, first real fighting game I would say like I really got into was like way back in the day, like Karate Champ.
Jesus.
Like that entertained me, but it wasn't like a two-player like Super Fighter like the Street Fighter series became. That's what really hooked me with Street Fighter. And SNK, when they came out, they tried. They had like the original Fatal Fury came out. It was kind of like a. It
was cute. It was cute.
Yeah, it was like this ain't Street Fighter. And then
no, it was colorful.
They did like the art of fighting. It did
big sprites.
Big sprites. Yeah, it's not Street Fighter. And then I remember Fatal Fury, then Fatal Fury 2 and whatever came out, but then Fatal Fury Special came out, and then the SNK games started to get, this still isn't Street Fighter, but this is a lot better than that first Fatal Fury game was.
Yeah.
Because they had like a World Heroes, which was kind of like a Street Fighter, kind of like everything else. But
yeah, I mean, call it what it is, right? Like those early SNK games, and World Heroes, they were kind of just distractions for when you weren't playing Street Fighter. There's something else in the art. Is the kind of exactly, Daz? It was like the on deck game.
Yeah, it was something else you could go fight with that was a little different. But it was
while you were waiting for your turn.
While you were waiting for your turn is exactly right. And then that's when kind of like SNK really started coming out of this like mediocre fighting land they had created. And then all of a sudden this year, Samurai Showdown comes out and this other franchise drops called the King of Fighters, where they had it was the King of Fighters 94. That's so long ago.
Fucking old.
Yeah, they're like you could pick teams of characters, and then the gameplay of that, inched even closer to Street Fighter, to the point where you can now play it. I would say, at that moment in time, not uber competitively, but I could have a lot of fun and wouldn't feel like I was losing on my own accord if I lost in a game with somebody in the King of Fighters series. And I kind of wanted to go, part of me wanted to pick the original, towards the beginning, but I do remember, as the King of Fighters progressed throughout time, the play mechanics then, inched more and more closer towards, Street Fighter, where it kind of becomes, but it's always been like its own animal, the Capcom sprites are kind of like big and beefy, and these characters are, they're beefy guys, they're slender, tall, lean, very anime-esque to a sense as far as the art style goes. That was one thing that kind of always drew me to the series. But
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like the early King of Fighters, 94 when it first came out, like they were just kind of getting their feet underneath them. And I think the one that really caught my eye was 96. But that 96 is almost like Street Fighter 2. It was like the first time King of Fighters had that, like you're saying, Jones, you were able to kind of have more of a competitive experience, that just felt more balanced and more tuned. Fatal Fury games, Art of Fighting games, they certainly like looked cool on the hardware, but they really didn't play very well. But man, when King of Fighters 96 came out, that kind of brought me into the fold of that fandom.
Oh yeah, it actually the King of Fighters did something that's like really strange if I reflect on it. Like if you go back to like when Fatal Fury came out, which is actually called the King of Fighters, it's Fatal Fury's full name. It had Terry Bogard, and he is like a trash character. He's got
Totally.
this vest and the hat. Like when that came out, like this is like, I got like Ryu and Ken and all these cool characters in Street Fighter, and then I got this dude with like some Converse on, like a hat, and
Looking
a
like a
vest.
truck driver.
Yeah, he looks like a truck driver. In like
He looks like the dude that you would beat up in a beat 'em up game. He looks like the guy that you would. He doesn't even look like the main fucking character. He looks like the dudes that you beat their asses in the game.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then so he went from this character that I had like absolutely zero interest in at all, over the course of time, because then went to like he came in the King of Fighters, and then that kind of got me interested when the Real Bout Fatal Furies games came out, which, like I said, everything progressed just a little bit better, each iteration of their fighting games till they got more and more polished and balanced. But by this time in 98, like this version of Terry Bogard is, I don't know, it might be like in my like top 3 like characters of people I like in fighting games. I like everything about Terry Bogard in this fighting game.
But he plays like nothing else.
He's got like everything. He's just
Yeah, but he just plays so different from everything. Like I'm used to Ken and Ryu. He does not play like that.
I agree with Daz. He's totally not a Shoto character. He's kind of his own animal.
It's a great animal.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
just
he's an animal. He's got Power Dunk, man.
Power Dunk.
Power Dunk is an amazing move.
King of Fighters 98 to me felt almost like what Street Fighter 2 Turbo was for that series. Like 98 was when it just locked in cement. Like the characters became the characters. You kind of have the cool setup and rivalries. Like of course you have the awesome, old King of Fighters characters that are new to the series, like Kyo and Yori and their rivalry. But you also have the Fatal Fury characters. You just have so much stuff. This is the Street Fighter 2 Turbo of the King of Fighters series.
Yeah, definitely say that's a fair assessment of it. Yeah, it just has so much, like over time, like each iteration of these that came out, they've taken ideas, then, bounced it to the next year and kind of elevated it. Like one of the things I love about these King of Fighter games is the characters have special kind of like introductions before the fight if certain characters are going up against each other. It's just like a little touch that gives the game like so much personality.
that was what drew me to it when you showed me 95. Then when Yori and Kyo were on screen together, I was like, oh shit, there's something going on.
Yeah, they know each other.
Shit's about to go down. I thought that was fucking great.
Yes, I think this one has like over 80 like just individual actions between characters. So like
That's just
almost
insane.
everybody knows everybody.
That's a big party.
Yeah, it's like like Clark
Fucking Clark.
Clark sees Ralph and they do like this Ginyu Force like Dragon Ball dance.
Dude, you go a little crazy in those jungles in Ikari Warriors, Jones, you said something like when we were talking about Samurai Showdown like episodes back. At the time, Street Fighter was really playing it safe. Like this Super came out and Super Turbo came out, and there's so many new innovations that the King of Fighters series like created kind of across the board, that they slowly started pulling into the Alpha series, that they started slowly pulling over into the Street Fighter 3 series and other fighting games in general. Like there are a lot of innovations that came out of King of Fighters at a time when Street Fighter was honestly kind of playing it a little safe, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the things where Street Fighter, I lost a little bit of attraction to Street Fighter when Super Street Fighter 2 came out. And I'm going to put that primarily on the sound. I did not like the sound design in either of those games, that or Turbo. I just did not like that weird, echoey, whatever they're doing with Q sound. I did not like it. None of the new characters in it in Super were, like
just not memorable.
T-Hawk, DJ.
I think memorably sucked.
While I thought like that Street Fighter series, it wasn't failing by any means at all, but it
wasn't innovating.
It wasn't innovating about it. Exactly, it was not innovating. The new things about it were not attracting me to it. And these games, the King of Fighters, the new things in it were attractive.
Start the match and the level has like that little establishing shot and it tells a little story, and then the fighters see each other, and if they know each other, they'll exchange some some trash talk against each other. It just made it like this cool story. Every single year there was a new King of Fighters, some new either big innovation for their battle systems, their fighting systems, or just presentation, like the stuff that we're talking about now, where it's a little bit more story and kind of filling out the cast of characters and the conflicts in the world.
For the most part, I'd say it had like the whole package as far as like what I want in a fighting game. It had I thought the graphics were nice, they looked good. The sound design was good, as whether it was the background music, which was amazing for a cartridge. The CD version, was amazing for being CD version. But I mean, even the game itself, although it gets wacky, let's not pretend it don't get, straight up bonkers, but it had a story. Like, you were going through, you're in the King of Fighters tournament, and there's usually like some boss at the end of it, and in 98 it happens to be Rugal, which
this is post Geese, right? So
this post Geese era, post
Krauser
era.
After Geese falls off the building and after Krauser, right? So Rugal, those are some big shoes to fill.
Rugal, he's one of the most demonic creatures of life. Actually, this week I did two things that I didn't think I was going to be able to do. And one of them was I beat Metroid Dread, which I came real close to deciding I can't beat this game. And then after I had just, because that game just whoops you hard as far as repetition and doing things. And now I'm King of Fighters 98. I'm here. It's Rugal time. And he was just beating a hole in my soul that had already been crushed.
Omega Rugal.
Genocide. That's all I heard. Like
I remember that.
And but I finally beat him, which was really strange because he just murdered me like every time. Like it's not even a fight. And then like one time, I don't know if just the AI like didn't start up when the match fought, but he just was like really stupid one round, and I just like cheesed him, and I won. But I'll take it because that guy is unbelievable. It's an unbelievably powerful man. The one thing that I think the King of Fighters kind of build upon, like better than I would say Capcom, is there's a lot of filler characters in the King of Fighters. I mean, you can still play with them, have a good time, but there are like, more top shelf characters, and they kind of all have this lore that throughout these, each year, there's, the King of Fighters game, this lore kind of gets built up, as opposed to a lot of the Street Fighter lore is kind of like imaginary in sense. Like there might be like a story.
It's just there at the end of the game. It's just like there's no story through the game. It's just there as a reward.
Well, there's like
I think Street Fighter lore is it's too heavy of a word for what it is.
Well, it's like like Ryu and Ken,
and that's it.
They were trained by Shenlong. Like it's some story you read like back in the day or whatever, which they eventually made a character for him. Which Akuma and Goki's awesome and all that. But outside of that, like there is really Street Fighter's very hollow as far as story or lore goes.
But they made such a good movie out of it.
I don't know if you've ever made a good fighting game movie anything. When Mortal Kombat 1 is leading the pack, you got problems.
I'll tell you this, the Street Fighter 2V anime series was on point though, especially like the last 4 episodes of it. They were amazing.
I think the animated movie was amazing as well.
That was on constant rotation back then.
Not the King of Fighters movie.
No,
which was
the Fatal Fury one. No thanks. That's all right. You can keep that.
Well, that and like the SNK always took little chances in their games where they do little like risque type things as a comparison to something like Capcom wouldn't do. Well, Mai's a example, yes. Yeah, there's 2 things I could think of when you bring her up.
Yeah, there's only 2 things I ever think of when I bring her up.
It's like 8 megs of RAM.
It's just
dedicated to just that.
My.bitmap.
Yeah. So like some of the female characters, and like in other SNK games as well, but like when a death blow is dealt to them, like for whatever reason, like the punch is so powerful it explodes their shirt.
Yeah, it blows their shirt off.
It blows their shirt off.
That's a money shot.
Street Fighter and King of Fighters share the same designer DNA. Like the same guy who designed the original Street Fighter 1 game, was the guy who worked on the King of Fighters series, who worked on the Fatal Fury series and things like that. So it's
and which one of them worked on the Street Fighter movie game?
Street Fighter the movie, the game, the movie. You mean with Raul Julia? In a role you won't soon forget. Producer and designer Nishiyama, he worked at IREM back in the old days. And we're talking Moon Patrol, and this is the company that later on went to make all these awesome shooters. But the game that he was like a big designer of at IREM, if y'all remember, was the old Kung Fu game. Like Kung Fu for the NES, and in the arcade. And if you remember, in the arcade, it was like way more kind of high detail. The sprite was way more high detail, and he had gotten convinced to kind of go over to Capcom, and it was him and this other designer essentially that went through and made the first Street Fighter game. But at the time, they're working on that title, and SNK was kind of coming out and making its kind of presence felt, and they essentially got poached to go work at SNK, and he went right from Street Fighter over the Fatal Fury and King of Fighters. So I think that's why you see a lot of awesome innovation, is because the DNA of both of these fighting games kind of comes from some of the same creators. Because you'd read about it
I'll
back
say
in
he
those.
learned a trick or two.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, because back in the game, when the game magazines come out, they'd be like, you'd read about it. It's like, SNK stole a bunch of people from Capcom, and when you read that stuff back then, you're like, they must have taken some employees. But it's like, no, they actually took the employees. They took the employees with them to work on these new series, and I don't know, just super cool to kind of learn, about that stuff and kind of the pedigree of, what started the series, and probably a good reason why it had so many innovations.
Well, that first Street Fighter game was kind of shit.
Yeah, but it created the Hadouken, it created all the, of course,
Barely.
it was not like the tied up, tight experience that Street Fighter 2 was, but you can't say that it may not be as playable as the second one, but it had a lot of bursts in it too.
Well, that's what I mean. That he must have learned a lot between Street Fighter and King of Fighters.
If you think about it from a gameplay mechanic, so if you would go, like the original Street Fighter, if you would play that, you can kind of look at the original Fatal Fury and kind of like make a comparison between those two games, as opposed to comparing Fatal Fury to Street Fighter 2.
Totally.
But then it, like I said, through, many iterations of fighting games, they got on track.
Yeah, they definitely did.
But it is amazing. All that came from, basically one man. I know more people were involved, but
sometimes when people get that chance to do really awesome stuff.
well, it did, because I have 4 different types of super moves in this game.
Damn right you do.
Which, they go from extravagant super moves to utterly insane. I think one of my favorite ones is the where Yori Yagami kind of goes berserk, throws the guy on the ground and
Molest
beats
him.
on him.
It's amazing.
Yeah, like, the kind of light side, dark side with him and Kyo, like Yori would kind of get possessed, and, he was always like this savage, kind of bloodthirsty kind of version of, Kyo a little bit, right? And just so much personality in their super moves. Like, the super moves, once again, not to bag on, Street Fighter at the time, but the super moves in the Street Fighter, super games, they were just basically like a little bit flashier versions of their regular moves. Like, oh, you do a super dragon punch, okay.
With a sunburst.
Yeah, with the big, like sunburst behind it, and it's slowed down.
We're going to do this move twice and add a sunburst.
Yeah, but like, in King of Fighters, like, they had a totally unique supers that were like, maybe they were, had a little bit of some of their normal moves as a part of it, but they had these kind of awesome showpiece kind of performances, right? Like, especially like Yori's, where he kind of goes apeshit and possessed and beats the guy to a bloody pulp on the ground.
That was so satisfying
You
to
knew
do.
something was happening.
Yeah, shit was about to go down. Yeah, because like the first version of their super move, like the regular one, was a lot of times, just like a big combo with a big finisher. But then the alternate version was always like something completely different. That was awesome.
Yeah, so you can go from like a standard power geezer to
Okay.
oh, I forget what type of geezer it's called. It used to be called triple geezer, but it's I can't remember. But essentially it's a power geyser with 3 basically blow-offs coming from the ground. Geysers
Eruptions.
of power.
Yeah.
It's Terry's eruption.
Yeah. So in '98, what's your team, Daz and Jones? Who's your star team?
Robert Garcia, Terry Bogard, and the cleanup man, Yori Yagami. He's like Willie D. He's the cleanup.
He's the cleanup man.
He's the cleanup man.
He's in the house. I never liked the art of fighting characters. I don't know. I just was so scarred from like the original art of fighting.
They're some of the weakest.
The way I looked at it,
they're weak sauce.
Robert was close to Ken-ish. He had the kicks
Yes.
and the kind of archy dragon punch, and I figure I just used them to kind of whittle down the shit. And if I lost him, it was no big deal, because normally I'd kind of finish it up with Terry. But if I had to get to Yori, everybody was going down. that was kind of how things played out. Yeah, if it got to Yori, then shit was getting real, and yeah, it was on at that point.
How about you, Jones? What was your team?
See, I went with
Joe
Terry
Higashi.
Bogard. Yo, it's Joe Higashi.
Dude, he's
Chris.
awesome. Joe's awesome. Don't you hate on Joe, Daz.
Joe's a piece of shit.
Okay. Yeah, so I went with Terry Bogard, Yori, and Kyo. Those are my that's my three. And it goes Terry, Yori, Kyo.
Yeah, I always have. I'm like Daz. I always have Yori as my cleanup guy. Every once in a while, I would, usually it's like, Cure, Yori, Kyo, and Terry. But every once in a while, I'd like throw Kim in there every once in a while, because Kim Kaplan was a pretty fun kind of charge character.
Crazy legs.
Yeah, he was pretty awesome.
Yeah, there was like some fun, characters you could kind of reach out and mess around with a little bit. Like, I'd never played these games to the extent that I played the Street Fighter games.
No.
Even when I owned them, I never put that kind of time into them. But
I wanted to get
go ahead.
good with Clark and Ralph just because they kicked my ass so much. And it was always so ugly. I was like, man, I want to do that to somebody, but I could never get good with them. But they just brutalized me. I've been scarred for years at the abuse that I was handed by those two assholes. Fucking Ikari Warriors.
These are special forces people, Daz. You do not.
Oh my
these aren't
God.
like normal people.
Ugly. And they just gleefully just beat your ass. It's like, what the hell am I doing
They
wrong,
need to
man?
make a new Ikari game with those guys in it. They have to do that.
Ralph
Dude,
Jones.
come
I
on.
definitely need to.
Come on.
I agree. Have Leona and Hydern, like all four of them.
I just remember
Four-player
seeing that in the arcade, and I was like, of course I do SNK because Ikari Warriors is like one of my favorite games, in the 80s. And I just remember looking at them in the arcade. I was like, they fucking put the Ikari Warriors in this game. I was like, this game's awesome. This game is just awesome as a fighting game, just based on the fact that the Ikari Warriors are in it.
All right. Well, we've showered enough praise on this. We still got 2 more games to do.
Yeah, in all fairness, we have, put a fair share of praise on this game, which I think it deserves. So this is, definitely one I wanted to get to, as we were doing fighting games. It was definitely a King of Fighters game. But the show must go on next week. And Dazpick, it's your turn to choose a game created by SNK for the NEO GEO library. So what have you come up with, sir?
Well, I love old Robert Garcia, but I'm just kidding. No, this is one I didn't really get to play a whole lot, and it's the Art of Fighting. No, I'm serious. No, I'm kidding. I didn't play this a lot, and I had it.
So scared.
And I really wanted to play it more, but I just never got around to it. But it was Guru, Mark of the Wolves.
Yes. The Olympic judges are giving you 10s right now, Daz.
Yeah, there's God.
after
awesome.
last time, I don't know, just still haven't gotten over that. I still see Hardy Darn in my dreams.
I'm still suffering for that den of mediocrity. That was Tobal 2.
Oh,
but
God.
hey, whatever.
Jones, back me up here.
So it's the biggest cast of B-list characters I've ever seen in my fucking life.
I think if you could put the two games together,
There might be something really
you would have
special.
one really good game.
All right.
All right, so awesome. So stick around next week, and we'll give our opinions on Garou, Mark of the Wolves.
Crack shoot!
Till then, this is Jones with Dazpick and Gohan, and we will see you next time.
Until next time.
Bad knuckle!
Crack shoot.